A man at a coffee shop threw a napkin at me and yelled, "You're the one who showed up to a date in pajamas." I found a profile with my photos where I talk about hygiene problems and ask to borrow money. I was sitting in my usual corner spot at the local coffee place, trying to finish some work on my laptop when this complete stranger marched up to my table. He looked furious, his face red and twisted with anger. Before I could even look up properly, he grabbed a handful of napkins from the dispenser and threw them right at me. The napkins scattered across my laptop and fell to the floor as he shouted about pajamas and dates. Everyone in the coffee shop turned to stare. I felt my cheeks burning with embarrassment as I tried to process what was happening. I had never seen this man before in my life, yet he was acting like I had personally wronged him in the worst possible way. He kept going on about how I had wasted his time and embarrassed him in front of the restaurant staff. When I finally managed to stammer out that he had the wrong person, he pulled out his phone and shoved it in my face. There on the screen was a dating profile with my photos. Not just one photo, but several pictures that I recognized from my social media accounts. The profile had my face, but the information was completely wrong and frankly disturbing. According to this fake profile, I apparently had serious hygiene issues and was constantly asking matches to loan me money for various emergencies. The bio described someone who showed up to dates inappropriately dressed and had a history of bizarre behavior. I stared at the screen in complete shock as this stranger continued to berate me for ruining his evening. After he finally stormed off, still muttering angrily, I sat there shaking. Other customers were still glancing over at me, whispering among themselves. I quickly packed up my things and left, my mind racing with questions about who could have done this and why. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those photos and how someone had access to them. I spent hours going through different dating apps and websites, searching for more fake profiles. What I found made my stomach drop. There were multiple accounts across various platforms, all using my pictures, but with increasingly horrible descriptions. One profile claimed I had anger management issues and had thrown food at previous dates. Another suggested I was financially unstable and would ask men to pay for everything, including my gas to get home. The worst one described someone who had poor personal hygiene and would show up to dates wearing inappropriate clothing like pajamas or workout gear. I started documenting everything, taking screenshots and notes about which platforms these profiles appeared on. Each discovery felt like a punch to the gut. Someone had taken the time to create these elaborate fake personas, using my face to represent everything I would never do or be. The next few days were a nightmare. I started noticing strange looks from people in my neighborhood, at the grocery store, even at work. A woman at the pharmacy actually backed away from me when I approached the counter. It became clear that word was spreading, and my reputation was being destroyed by someone I didn't even know. Then came the confrontations. A man at the gas station accused me of standing him up after he had driven an hour to meet me. Another approached me at the mall, angry about money I had supposedly borrowed and never returned. Each time, I tried to explain that it wasn't really me, but they would show me the profiles with my photos as proof. I felt like I was losing my mind. The paranoia was eating away at me, making me question every interaction and every glance from strangers. I started avoiding places where I might run into people, essentially becoming a prisoner in my own life. Update 1. I've been digging deeper into who could be behind this, and I think I'm getting closer to the truth. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that whoever was doing this had access to a lot of my personal photos, including some that weren't even posted publicly on social media. I started going through my friend lists and thinking about who might have grudges against me. That's when I remembered some weird comments my brother-in-law had made recently. He had always been a bit strange around me, but I had attributed it to normal adjustment issues since I married his sister. Looking back, there were signs I should have picked up on. He would make odd remarks about my relationship, questioning whether his sister had made the right choice. He seemed to know details about my daily routine that I had never shared with him directly. There were times when he would bring up my social media posts in conversation, referencing photos or updates that I couldn't remember discussing with the family. I decided to test my theory by posting a new photo on a private account that only close family members could see. Within 24 hours, I found that same photo on a new fake dating profile. The bio this time claimed I was looking for someone to support me financially because I couldn't hold down a steady job. The evidence was becoming undeniable, but I still couldn't understand the motivation. Why would he want to destroy my reputation so thoroughly? What had I done to deserve this level of malicious behavior? I started paying closer attention to family conversations and his behavior around me. During a recent family dinner, he made several pointed comments about how some people don't deserve the good things that happen to them. He would look directly at me while making these remarks, but always in a way that could be dismissed as coincidental. The breaking point came when I overheard him on a phone call. I had arrived early to pick up my spouse from their parents' house and was waiting in the living room when I heard him talking in the kitchen. He was describing someone who sounded exactly like the fake profiles, laughing about how this person was getting what they deserved for being such a terrible choice. My heart was pounding as I realized he was talking about me. The casual cruelty in his voice was chilling. He spoke about ruining someone's reputation like it was a fun hobby project, completely disconnected from the real human impact of his actions. That night, I couldn't bring myself to tell my spouse what I had discovered. How do you explain to someone that their sibling is systematically destroying your life? I knew it would create a massive family crisis, and I wasn't sure if my spouse would even believe me without concrete proof. I started documenting his behavior more carefully, looking for patterns and evidence that would be hard to dismiss. The fake profiles continued to multiply, each one more damaging than the last. My anxiety was through the roof, and I was barely functioning at work or in social situations. Update 2. The situation escalated in a way I never expected. I finally gathered enough courage to confront my brother-in-law directly, but his reaction revealed something much deeper and more disturbing than simple dislike. I had planned to approach him calmly with the evidence I had collected, hoping to resolve this quietly within the family. Instead, when I showed him the screenshots and explained how I knew he was behind the fake profiles, he completely lost it. His mask slipped entirely, and I saw a level of rage and resentment that genuinely frightened me. He started screaming about how I had ruined everything, how his sister was supposed to end up with his best friend, not some random person like me. Apparently, he had been planning for years for his sister to marry this friend of his. They had been close since childhood, and he had always assumed it was inevitable that they would end up together. When my spouse chose me instead, it completely derailed his vision of how the family should look. He felt like I had stolen his sister away from the person who truly deserved her. In his twisted logic, destroying my reputation was justified because I was the obstacle preventing his perfect family scenario. But the most shocking revelation came when he admitted that this wasn't his first attempt at sabotage. He had been working behind the scenes for months, trying to create problems in my relationship. He had been spreading rumors to mutual friends, trying to convince family members that I wasn't good enough, and even attempting to set up situations where his friend would coincidentally run into my spouse. The fake dating profiles were just his latest and most elaborate scheme. He thought that if he could make me look terrible enough, if he could embarrass me sufficiently in public, then my spouse would eventually see me as a liability and end the relationship. Then his friend could swoop in as the supportive shoulder to cry on. Hearing him explain his reasoning was like listening to someone describe an elaborate fantasy. He had convinced himself that he was protecting his sister from making a terrible mistake, that he was the hero of this story. The complete disconnect from reality was honestly terrifying. During this confrontation, my spouse walked in and heard everything. The look of horror and betrayal on their face was heartbreaking. This was their sibling, someone they had trusted and loved their entire life, and now they were discovering that he had been actively trying to destroy their marriage. The family meeting that followed was one of the most uncomfortable experiences of my life. Parents trying to process that their son had been engaging in this kind of behavior, siblings taking sides, everyone struggling to understand how things had gotten to this point. The brother-in-law showed no real remorse, just anger that his plan had been discovered before it could succeed. What hurt the most was learning about all the small betrayals that had been happening for months. Comments he had made to extended family members about my character, times he had tried to exclude me from family events, moments when he had deliberately tried to make me feel unwelcome or uncomfortable. I realized that every family gathering had been a performance for him, pretending to tolerate me while secretly working to undermine my relationship. The psychological impact of discovering that level of deception and malice from someone who was supposed to be family was overwhelming. Final update. The aftermath of everything coming to light has been both devastating and oddly liberating. My spouse and I have had to rebuild our relationship from scratch, working through the trust issues and emotional damage that months of manipulation had created. The hardest part was accepting that some of the doubts and insecurities I had been feeling weren't entirely in my head. There really had been someone working against me, planting seeds of discord and creating problems where none should have existed. It was validating to know I wasn't crazy, but also heartbreaking to realize how much of my emotional energy had been wasted on his manufactured drama. We ended up having to take a complete break from that side of the family for several months. My spouse needed time to process the betrayal and figure out how to move forward with their relationship with their brother. The parents were struggling with their own guilt and confusion about how they had missed the signs of his behavior. The brother-in-law's reaction to being exposed was to double down on his justifications. He never showed genuine remorse for the pain he had caused, instead focusing on how unfair it was that his plan hadn't worked. He seemed to genuinely believe that he had been doing the right thing, that I was the villain in this story for disrupting his vision of how things should be. Removing all the fake dating profiles became a project in itself. Each platform had different processes for reporting fake accounts, and some required extensive documentation to prove identity theft. I had to provide photo identification, explain the situation multiple times, and wait for investigations that sometimes took weeks. The social fallout in our community took months to resolve. Word had spread about the fake profiles and the confrontations with angry dates, and I had to have countless awkward conversations explaining what had really happened. Some people were understanding and supportive, while others seemed disappointed to lose what they thought was juicy gossip. But the strangest part of this whole experience was discovering how it had actually strengthened my relationship with my spouse in unexpected ways. Going through something this intense together, having to rebuild trust and communication from the ground up, forced us to develop a deeper level of honesty and intimacy than we had ever had before. We learned to recognize the signs of outside manipulation and developed better boundaries with family members. We created new traditions and support systems that didn't rely on his family dynamics. Most importantly, we learned that our relationship could survive deliberate sabotage, which gave us confidence that it could handle whatever other challenges life might throw at us. The brother-in-law eventually moved to another state, claiming it was for work opportunities, but everyone knew he was running away from the consequences of his actions. His best friend, the one he had wanted his sister to marry, was horrified when he learned about the fake profiles and wanted nothing to do with the situation. Looking back, I can see how his plan was doomed from the start. Real relationships aren't built on the absence of other options or on one person's reputation being destroyed. They're built on genuine connection, shared values, and mutual respect. No amount of fake dating profiles or manufactured drama could have changed the fundamental compatibility between my spouse and me. The whole experience taught me about the importance of trusting my instincts and not dismissing feelings of unease as paranoia. It also showed me how much damage one person can do when they're committed to causing harm, but also how resilient human connections can be when they're genuine. Today, my spouse and I are stronger than ever. We've built a life together that doesn't depend on family approval or social reputation. We've learned to value the opinions of people who actually know us and to dismiss the judgments of those who are willing to believe the worst without asking questions. The fake profiles are gone, the angry confrontations have stopped, and I can finally walk through my neighborhood without wondering if someone is going to approach me with accusations about dates I never went on. It took almost a year to fully recover from the emotional impact, but I'm grateful for the clarity that came from surviving something so deliberately malicious. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had never figured out who was behind the fake profiles. Would he have eventually gotten bored and moved on to other schemes? Would the constant stress have eventually destroyed my relationship anyway? I'll never know, but I'm thankful that the truth came out when it did, before even more damage could be done.